Hello friends, we are with the last poet for the 6th week, that is Sujata Bhatt. We have chosen her poem. We will see the objectives, her life and writings, read the poem, a different history, then pay attention to one particular poem, Search for My Tongue. We will discuss the theme, form, language and literary aspects in this poem. We will examine human relationships and reflections on life and consider certain takeaways and summarize the discussion of our poem. To state the objectives very clearly, we have listed them here. To learn about the life and writings of Sujata Bhatt, to read Sujata Bhatt's poem A Different History and discuss her poem Search for My Tongue. The third objective is to understand the conflict between mother tongue and foreign tongue within our mouth, which we already discussed with reference to Kamala Das's poem Words. To realize the power of our mother tongue, wherever we go, we may be born in one country, live in different countries, use a different language, but we can never underestimate the power of our mother tongue. To explore the close link between language and identity, to consider elements of theme, form, language and literary devices in the poem Search for My Tongue. Finally, to examine certain aspects of human relationships and reflections on life in the poem. Let's see the life of Sujata Bhatt. She is an Indian diasporic poet, born in 1956. She is basically a poet, a translator and a short story writer. Because of her various cultural experiences and different languages, she is a multicultural and multilingual artist. She has received several awards like Commonwealth Poetry Prize in 1989, Chumley Award in 1991 and Tratti Poetry Prize in 2000. She has held visiting writer fellow positions at the University of Victoria, Canada, Dickinson College, US, the Poetry Archive, UK. We have a quotation from her to think about the power of language. What happened when the Gujarati and the Marathi and the Hindi I spoke made room for the English words? She was born in India. She had learnt Gujarati, Marathi and Hindi as well, and later on these words, these languages gave room for English language. And then what happened to her? That is the burden of this poet Sujata Bhatt. She has talked about this conflict between multicultural experiences, multilingual experiences in her poems. She is primarily a poet. We have listed some of her poetry collections here. Bruinism is the first collection published in 1988. Then we have Monkey Shadows, Puppies in Translation, The Stinking Rose, Point No Point Selected Poems, Agatora in 2000, A Color for Solitude, and lastly Pure Lizard. She has also written short stories and translated writings of others into English. We have chosen two poems to represent Sujata Bhatt. You can read many other poems and understand more about her cultural collisions, coalescences, assimilations, acculturations and many other things that happen in her poetry. The first poem is A Different History. The second poem, Search for My Tongue, is the one we are going to discuss in some more detail. These two poems were published in her first collection, Bruinism. Bruinism is a word referring to a type of soil. The second poem, that is Search for My Tongue, was written in Maryland, US after listening to a tape recording from her mother in India. This is an experimental poem with Gujarati script, transliteration in English and translation in English as well. That means we have three sections. First English, next Gujarati with transliteration in English, and the third one completely in translation in English. Let's read this poem, A Different History. Great Pan. Pan is the god of the wild, forests, shepherds, rural area and things like that. Great Pan is not dead. He simply emigrated to India. Great Pan is a Western god, and our poet, being an Indian, thinks about great Pan in the context of India. Great Pan is not dead, he simply emigrated to India. Remember the poet emigrated to US, to UK, to Germany and things like that. It is a kind of reverse migration. People from India migrate to US and other countries. The gods and goddesses from those countries are migrating to India in different ways. Here the gods roam freely, disguised as snakes or monkeys. Every tree is sacred, and it is a sin to be rude to a book. It is a sin to shove a book aside with your foot. Everything is sacred in India. Remember the poem that we read from Ramanujan on snakes? Snake is a goddess, snake is a god. So everything from nature is sacred. We can't shove away something, we can't kick something with our leg. We continue. A sin to slam books down hard on a table. Even we can't just throw down a book on a table. A sin to toss one carelessly across your room. You can't throw away a book just like that. You must learn how to turn the pages gently without disturbing Saraswati, because she is a goddess of learning, without offending the tree from whose wood the paper was made. A book is made from a tree, and a book has knowledge. So the goddess of learning who is in the book is also in the tree. That's how we have an extensive understanding of whole nature as divine creature or divine being. This is a different history that Sujata Bhatt presents in her poem. Great Pan, on the other hand, he is mischievous, he plays in different ways. We have something more to say about a different history, specifically language. Now let's see, which language has not been the oppressor's tongue? Which language truly meant to murder someone? And how does it happen that after the torture, after the soul has been cropped, with the long sight swooping out of the conqueror's face, the unborn grandchildren grow to love that strange language? Now we come to the post-colonial context in this particular section of a different history. We have many languages in India. We all came into contact with the English language, and now we see we have grown in love with English language for various reasons. We have our professional life through this language. We have our creative life through this language. Hundreds and thousands of writers have become very famous by using English, right from R.K. Narayan to Sujata Bhatt. Some have chosen to live in other countries like Sujata Bhatt. In our own country, we have many writers, upcoming writers, who are able to write wonderful pieces of literature in poetry, in drama, in novel, winning awards from various locations. We now move on to the second poem, Search for My Tongue. It is all about language. The previous poem more about culture, and the last section of the previous poem had something to do with language, but now we have a poem which is all about language. Search for my tongue. You ask me what I mean by saying I have lost my tongue. I ask you, what would you do if you had two tongues in your mouth and lost the first one, the mother tongue, and could not really know the other, the foreign tongue? You could not use them both together even if you thought that way, and if you lived in a place you had to speak a foreign tongue, your mother tongue would rot and die in your mouth until you had to spit it out. I thought I spit it out, but overnight while I dream, something happens. Here we have the second part in Gujarati and transliteration in English. Munehatuke akijib akin basha મેં તો કી નાખી છે પરંતુ રાત્રે સ્વપ્ન મારી ભાષા વાંચી આવે છે ફૂલને જે મારી ભાષા મારી જીભ મોદમી કેલે છે ફૂલની જે મારી ભાષા મારી જીભ મોદમી પાકી છે. It grows back, a stump of your shoot grows longer, grows moist, grows strong veins. It ties other tongue in knots. The bud opens in my mouth. It pushes the other tongue aside. Every time I think I have forgotten, I think I have lost the mother tongue, it blossoms out of my mouth. You can see a dramatic situation where we have two tongues in the mouth One tongue pushes the other tongue out. One is Gujarati, that is the mother tongue, another is English. Because Sujata Bhatt had moved to different locations, US, UK, Canada, and chose to live in Germany, marrying a German, she has this problem of her own mother tongue coming out in her dreams. In her being alone, sometimes it automatically erupts like a volcano. It comes out. You can't help it. You have to live with the language. You have to live with the experience that you have had in your childhood. We can't disinherit our heritage. That's the whole idea. We may move to different places. We may earn money. We may become famous. But we are what we are. Our psychological identity, our social identity, our linguistic identity is all from our early childhood experiences, particularly our language. It comes up on its own. We may learn Greek mythology, we may learn Western mythology, so we assimilate everything and understand the world in our own way. It is there, that mother tongue is there. We don't have to search, it will come out on its own. We have listed a number of questions in different slides to understand the whole poem. Just listen to these questions and then read the poem again, you will get the answers. What is the meaning of losing one's mother tongue? Can we ever lose our mother tongue? Even if we actually lose our tongue, can we lose our mother tongue? What would you do if you had two tongues in your mouth? That's a hypothetical question. Physically two tongues. What would you do? What would you do if you had lost your first tongue? What would you do if you could not know the second tongue? Can you use two tongues together? English and Hindi together, English and Gujarati together, that she has attempted in the transliteration part. What happens to you if you always use a foreign language in a location other than your own? When you are far away from your country, when you are using another language like English, what happens to you as a person? It happened to me personally. I lost myself. I did not feel comfortable with myself when I did not speak my own mother tongue Tamil for about 3 to 6 months when I lived far away from Tamil Nadu. It can happen to anybody. I can relate to this poem very well. Nowadays, students or people who move from their own state to another state or to another country, when they don't have an opportunity to listen to Tamil or English, Hindi or Gujarati, they would know this sense of restlessness when you don't listen to your own language. Would your mother tongue disappear? Certainly not. Can you spit out your mother tongue? Not at all. How does your mother tongue assert its presence in you? It comes out on its own in our dreams, in our moments of suffering, in our traumatic experiences. Here are some more questions. What is the language in the second part of the poem? We mentioned it as Gujarati. You can learn more about it. Why does it come into a poem in English? One line in Gujarati, another line in English transliteration. Why is there a transliteration also? That is, the Gujarati script is given in English words so that we can read it. Then we also have a translation of that in the next case. Why is it given in English translation too? So we know the readership. Sujata Bhatt is not writing only for Gujarati people, she is not writing only for people who know English, she is writing for both. Why does the mother tongue return to us in our dreams and in our self-talk when we are alone? Can we stop it? Why does it come back? That means we are made in our language, in our first language. For section 3 we have some more questions. What does our mother tongue do to us? How does it grow back even when we forget them, when we go away from that language speaking area? What does it do to the foreign tongue? How does it occupy the mouth? What does the speaker think about her tongue physically and also symbolically? What does the mother tongue always do? The mother tongue always asserts itself, because that is the identity that we derive, we form in ourselves. So please keep these questions in your mind and read the poem once or twice, you will understand the poem much better. We have a thematic contrast between loss and gain, loss of one language, gain of another language, that is mother tongue and foreign tongue. We have questions and answers, we have dream and reality, we have the growth of one language and decay of another, but actually that decay comes back again. We have a monolingual context of one person speaking one language, and bilingual or multilingual context where the same person speaks different languages. We have the element of forgetting and remembering. We think we forgot our language, but it suddenly erupts and comes back. We have speech and also silence. We can choose to be silent. Even in silence, our mother tongue cannot remain silent. It will come back to us. We have the native land and also the foreign land. We may be in a native land, use our native language, but when we go to a foreign land, when the distance is long, when we have not used the language for a long time, we think we have lost it, we have forgotten it, but it's not true. Our mother tongue will come back to us in some ways. Let's see the formal analysis now. The title of the poem is Search for My Tongue, that is a quest for a language. That means for the sake of our livelihood, we suppress our language, and so after some time it finds an expression of our own suppression in the form of poetry like this. The meter of the poem is primarily iambic tetrameter. We have iambic rhythm and 4 feet in every line. We have free verse without rhyme. The tone of the poem is conversational tone or pattern. The structure of the poem is like this. There is an interlocutor. One person speaks and there is another person who listens, and the interlocutor asks questions regarding the laws of the first language. The speaker answers and also questions. Mostly we can say that these questions and answers are from the poet herself, because it is her own experience. Therefore, the mode of the poem is autobiographical and reflective, personal. The purpose of the poem is to ask questions, philosophical questions on the significance of language for human beings, particularly the mother tongue, particularly for those who have moved away from their country, those who live in diasporic situations. Let's see the language used in the poem. The words are very simple and they are commonly used words, and most of these sentences are statements and some are complex sentences to reflect the confusion that we have in the use of mother tongue or foreign tongue. We have a question, but we don't have a question mark. That is a kind of ambiguous identity about the statement or question that we have in this poem. We have certain crucial conditional sentences like, what would you do if you had 2 tongues in your mouth? That is a hypothetical question. How do you answer it? Mostly we have monosyllabic words, single syllable words. Certain repetitions are there, like the singular remarkable repetition of the verb it grows, it grows, it grows in the poem. We have a visual power of the metaphor of it grows back, a shoot of a stem grows longer, grows moist, grows strong veins like a plant. Veins, plant are in the human being. Remember the poem by Kamala Das on words? It grows, words grow on me like leaves on a tree. We have the case of distinct use of Gujarati script with transliteration and also translation to emphasize the sound and sense of mother tongue in this poem. There is a meaning, there is also a sound of this mother tongue. We can see some metaphor of rotting and dying, decaying and growth and all that in this poem. Something like a plant, that is mother tongue growing strongly from the stump. Stump is also part of a plant. Knotting, mixing up and conflicting. We have something like a war between 2 languages in the mouth, and that mouth is only what is visible, but what happens in the mind is presented to us. So the mouth is something like a garden or a field where the language is like a plant that grows. We have many repetitions like ask, grows, bud opens. We have many alliterations in me, mean, 2 tongues, spit it out, stump and shoot, ties and tongue, my mouth. And language is presented as a symbol of our identity. Any language. Here Sujata Bhatt has a language of Gujarati, anyone else can have a different language. Now when we come to human relationships, we have to understand larger questions of humanity. Sujata Bhatt is a diasporic person and she deals with her dilemma in a foreign land. We have the interaction between the speaker and the interlocutor, one person who is listening. We have the interaction between the speaker and also the mother tongue. We have further interaction between the speaker and other cultures and languages like English. We have to realize there are limitations to assimilation or acculturation. Conflict and negotiation between languages and cultures always happen. Now the question that we have to ask is, do people speak a language or does a language speak people? This is the biggest question. Are we agents? Are we active agents or are we passive agents? Do we have any agency when we use language? That's a big question. The linguistic conflict and division within the mouth suggests a split personality in the mind of the poet. We are divided. That is the postmodern condition. We are divided beings. Can we unite? Can we put up a coherent self? That's a big question. Let's see some reflections on life. Language plays a central role in human lives, creating, uniting and dividing societies. We are born in a language before we come into the world. That's the whole point. As we are born into the world, we are born in a language. Before we interact with the world, before we understand the world, we learn the language. That is the process called normalization. We feel and think with and through language despite the problems of inadequacy and ambiguity. Remember, language is a tool invented by human beings. It is not a completely foolproof tool. It has lots of ambiguities, but still we are left with this incomplete tool. It's a very powerful tool though. We cannot escape from the language that shapes us in our early childhood, particularly the caregiver's language, that is the mother's language or anybody else who gives a care for the child. It operates and controls us at the level of the unconscious and dreams. The first language that we learn gets into our unconscious and our dreams. We don't have any control over it. Similarly, for some people, even the second language or third language can go to that level of unconscious and dreams. Reading and writing poetry helps us expand our understanding of our own self and the world. When you read poetry like this, you understand more about your own dependence on language. How we depend on language we can understand through Sujata Bhatt's poem Search for My Tongue. Here are some takeaways for us. Understand the power of your mother tongue. Whatever language you have as your mother tongue, understand the power of it. Don't underestimate it. Recognize the pivotal role of languages in human lives. Languages unite us and divide us. Recognize this pivotal role, central role of language in human societies. Be aware of the linguistic conflicts within yourself and in the society. We have a conflict within ourselves in terms of language, and also we have conflict in terms of language within the society. People who speak different languages or people who speak different dialects, different forms of the same language. Respect languages for their unique place in identity formation of individuals and societies. Remember, individuals are formed in language. Similarly, societies are also formed in and through language. That is a post-structuralist turn. We are made up of language. Resist the temptation to impose a particular language on people, even in the name of jobs, livelihood or social cohesion, or even in the name of some integration of a whole society. Imposition of a language will never do any good for any society, for that matter, anywhere in the world at any point of time. Many kings and queens in the past have attempted one language, one nation policy, but they have miserably failed. Avoid self-deception about mastery over another language. We may claim that we have mastered another language, but that mastery may not be completely true, because the mastery of that original mother tongue, even if it is incomplete, will gain hold over us. To summarize our discussion of Sujata Bhatt's poetry, we can say that we looked into the objectives of reading Sujata Bhatt's poetry by looking at her life and writings, by reading a different history first and then discussing Search for My Tongue in detail. We paid attention to the theme, form, language and literary devices used in the poem. We also looked into human relationships and reflections on life. Particularly, we emphasize the role of language in forming individuals and societies. We can achieve unity in a society only by accepting differences. That is the whole idea. Our people have moved to different countries in the world and they all use their own languages wherever they are. They use the language that is comfortable for them, convenient for them. They are all living, we can say happily, of course with certain constraints, but they manage to live smoothly, harmoniously. Harmony is most important. Harmony is a root of accepting diversity. We saw some takeaways, that is, pay attention to your mother tongue, pay attention to language that you use to understand yourself and the whole world. Here are some references which you can see and help yourself. Particularly look at that second reference by Santen on blended identity, culture and language variations in Sujata Bhatt's The Hole in the Wind. That is not the poem we have discussed, but the critic discusses more of blended identity in a German context by an Indian poet, Indian born poet writing in English. An Indian born poet with a Gujarati mother tongue living in Germany writing about German experience in English. That is a whole complicated business that we have today. Life is very complex. We can't simplify it in the name of certain rules and regulations for any purpose. We can't do it. We can live happily provided we accept our diversity. Thank you.